Good morning to everybody in Facebook Live and any other streaming platform that Sammy has put us onto. Great to see you. And good morning to everybody in the Zoom room. Welcome back for day 2. This is day 2 of the Invested Musician Peak Performance Challenge, 5-day challenge that we're working with you on improving your playing as quickly as we can in 5 days. So I'm really excited to be involved in this process and seeing how quickly people can learn, new repertoire, things that they've been struggling with, challenging pieces, and we're going to expand on what we did yesterday in today's session in terms of technique. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Please put in the chat where you're coming from, and if this is your first Invested Musician project, please also let us know. We'd love to hear from you. So my name is Andrew Bain. I am the principal horn of the Los Angeles Philharmonic, and you can see a few other things that I've done there. I'm the professor of horn at the Colburn Conservatory in downtown LA. I teach at the Aston Music Festival and School, and I'm the co-founder with Bain of Invested Musician. We started this business in the middle of the pandemic in May of 2020. We wanted to just create an environment where people could come, share ideas, and be supported in a very friendly way and a very helpful way to move their playing forward during the pandemic. And now what we're realizing as we emerge from the pandemic is that this community is even more important for people to feel as though they've got the support that they need to take the auditions that are coming up and the gigs that are emerging as we come out of lockdown, or as we head back into the new normal. All right. So this is our Invested Musician team. This morning we have in the room, I'm pretty sure, Sammy and Dana, but also working with Elizabeth and Rachel. Rupal, of course, is the co-founder, and she works on all the business aspect that we talk about in Invested Musician. So thank you to our team. Without them, there is no way that we could put on these free events. It takes an enormous amount of work to get these events to you and to deliver the content that we have and to share the expertise of our wonderful faculty from the laphil and from various places all around the world. So all of that stuff behind the scenes is an enormous amount of work, and we thank the team very much for that because they do an amazing job. Okay, so check out the Invested Musician website for more information about what we do. Also for resources, there's a lot of links to previous programs that we've done free for the community, links to our Invested Musician YouTube channel, where there's a lot of content in there. And if you click on the program page, this is the picture that will pop up, and we are starting a summer program in early June. It's a 12-week program. We have a limited number of spaces available. We're about half full at the moment, and we would love to have a chat with you about how we can help to move your playing forward, whether it's for a series of auditions that's coming up, whether you're auditioning for grad school or trying to get into university, or if you just want to move your playing and your career forward and need some support and help with that. We have 6 amazing faculty members of the Los Angeles Philharmonic who work with us. We have an incredible library of information and videos and workbooks. We actually, I just received the first hard copy of the workbook. Thank you, Dana. Last night. It looks amazing. Over 200 pages of incredible content, exercises, planning. So it's a lot of content. If you're at all interested in chatting with us about how we can help with you, just click on the link there at the top of the web page, and that'll take you to a meeting set up, and we can meet with you. Totally whenever that suits your time schedule. Okay. So recapping from yesterday, this is what we covered. We got through a lot of stuff yesterday. Today, I want to just sort of consolidate all of that and answer any questions that came up overnight. Hopefully, you've done your homework. For those of you here yesterday, you've been working on working on your piece, and you've been breaking it down and putting it back together in the way that we talked about. So we started with the thing that we're going to continue this theme all the way through the week, the 3 pillars of technical, musical, and mental. Yesterday, we started with the technical side, and we're going to continue with that today. Tomorrow, we'll be looking at the musical aspects of things, and then later in the week, the mental side of things. So that is really the basis of what we want to cover in this challenge, and understanding that. And I think the big takeaway for me from this is whichever of those 3 pillars is the weakest, that is the thing that's going to limit you in performance, and it's going to limit you for auditions, for recitals. So unless we address all 3 of those things, we're going to be suffering at some point. So the foundation, so we're talking about the technical foundation. What I'm constantly thinking about in terms of technique is what I'm doing simple? Is it natural? Is it repeatable? So is it something that I'm going to every day be able to wake up and execute? Because when we're under pressure, and when we think about it, put your hand up, just a quick show of hands. I'll take the screen off. Quick show of hands. Who gets nervous when they play a concert? Anyone? Nah, not so good. All right, who gets nervous when you play an audition? Good. Okay, great. We've got a lot of normal people here. That's terrific. That's excellent. So what is the takeaway of this? Well, when we get nervous, things tend to change. And if our technique is unstable, if it's built on things that are challenging to put together, if it's built on something that's complex, and if it's something that your body doesn't want to do, when we're under pressure, that will change. And this is what happens with a lot of people in auditions, is that, and in big performances, is that those things change. We lose control of them, and then the performance suffers. And we come out and like, wow, I thought going into this, performance, I was really prepared, and I felt really, really good and in good shape, and then it just fell apart. And oftentimes it's because our technique is not based on this foundation of simple, natural, and repeatable. So we started with the breathing. And there's a really great question from Steve overnight that I got, and it was in the chat yesterday, I missed it. Sorry about that. If we take 2 fingers, put them on your lips, this is for brass players and wind players. It probably doesn't work for string players, but it'll make you feel nice anyway. So we imagine that we're breathing through our fingers. So you touch your fingers against your lip, and that feeling of the rushing air, and you'll feel, because there's a little bit of resistance, you'll feel where your body is working. And this is natural. This is what your body wants to do. So get in contact with that feeling. And this is the one that we want to replicate when we're just taking a breath before we play. And then to exhale, I just move my fingers 2 inches in front of my face and just release that air onto my fingers. And I'll feel how powerful and how stable that air is. I'll also be able to feel what happens inside my body. Nice, relaxing feeling through my torso and engagement of my stomach. So I want to encourage those things. I want to encourage for me to transfer those things from when I'm just doing them away from the instrument to putting them in the instrument. If I can do that, then I'm going to be building this foundation of simple, natural, and repeatable. Natural being what my body wants to do. Repeatable is pretty self-explanatory. If it's based on breathing, if my mechanism as a brass player or wind player is based on breathing and releasing the air in this way that's in touch with what my body wants to do, it's by nature going to be repeatable. I'm going to be able to do that when I'm under pressure because it's what my body wants to do. The building blocks of sound production we talked about. So air, lips and the setup, and the tongue. And we talked about how we can extract each of those. We can work on the air. We can work on the tongue with the air, or through a straw. And then we can just use the lip with the air. And then, of course, the 2 additions to that are movement and coordination. And then we spend a little bit of time putting all those things together, adding them up as I was just doing that. Okay, it'd be great if you can put in the chat, or raise a hand and give us some insight. What did you discover overnight when you put what we talked about yesterday in practice? Any revelations? Anything that came up that was like, whoa, this actually is way worse than what it normally was. Or it's worse, it's so much easier. And Sammy and Dana are going to look at the chat. Yeah, great. Slurring helps with getting air going between the notes. Absolutely. So Sally asks, how do we use movement in pieces without mechanics of fingering? And as a brass player, this is really easy, but we just have to take the element of caring if we get the right notes out of the picture, right? Because it's really simple. I'm really good at not caring how I sound like in the practice room to a point, because I want to focus on the elements that I'm putting in and the process and the quality of my production. So what I have to take off the table is my need to get the right notes and control the sound. I have to allow that to be like, okay, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Because what I'm doing is I'm trying to discover if my simple, natural, and repeatable mechanism is actually going to be working. And in order to do that, I need to focus on that. So I can't put, what we tend to do as brass players is we put these two big caveats in front of our playing. I've got to get the notes and I've got to make a decent sound. We put that at the forefront. And the problem with that is it limits us being able to experiment. It limits us being able to release and discover what is actually going on in our mechanism. So what I'm trying to do is when I focus on the breathing and blowing is really be aware of the feeling that I have when I do that in a natural way. So I feel expansion down the bottom and I feel a really nice release on the way out and engaging my stomach. Right? So then what I'm trying to do is I'm gradually building that up until it gets into the instrument. So I'll use the mouthpiece as a little bit of resistance, but I still want the same feeling. These are really good drills to do because there is no sound. There is no, I'm trying to play the right notes. It's just I'm focusing on the feeling. And then we continue to transfer this into the instrument. I don't want to react to the sound. What I want to react to is the question of, am I executing what I want to execute? Am I breathing how I want to breathe? Am I releasing the air how I want to release it into the instrument? Once I'm happy that I'm doing that, at that point, then I can assess, what does it sound like? And through my experimentation in my own playing, what I've discovered is that I sound 10 times better when I execute the ingredients really well, rather than me reacting to the sound. Because me reacting to the sound, I can make a pretty good sound and not think about anything to the technique. But if I manipulate that sound, I'm not really sure of what the ingredients are. And over time, I'm building intention, I'm building in manipulation, I'm building in a whole variety of things that I'm not sure what happens. It may sound good in that moment in my practice room, but when it goes under pressure, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to remember back to, oh, I think I'm going to try and make that sound, and I'm putting in a different mechanism each time. So it goes against the simple, natural, and repeatable, because it's not simple. It's actually quite complex. Because you think about it as a brass player, how many brass players, show of hands, how many brass players do we have in the room? I'm sure there's quite a lot. Yeah, great. So most of us. Good. And what about wind players, flute, clarinet, bassoon? Yeah, we all use our face, and so the muscles in our face are going to react differently each day. Hi, Francis. Good morning. So the muscles react each day. After, like, for example, we played Bruckner 9 last week. Every morning after Bruckner 9, I feel like I've been hit in the face with a cricket bat. Doesn't feel so great. I don't want my mechanism to be based on the reaction that I have to how my face feels. I want it to go back to what are the ingredients that I want to put in to make quality production, quality sound. So I want to go back to my breathing, make sure that my breathing is the same as it was yesterday. Make sure that I'm releasing the air the same that it was yesterday. Make sure that my basic setup is the same. And then I'm going to be able to produce the same level of quality. So as a brass player to play, and I sort of demonstrated this a little bit yesterday, if I wanted to do movement without the coordination of my fingers, I don't worry about getting the right note. So I'm going to play, let me play for you guys Mozart 3. Mozart third horn concerto, everyone's favorite, right? I'm going to play it on first, second, and third on the F horn. Now, that is exactly the same fundamentals that I would use if I was using the right fingers. So I'm breathing how I want to breathe. I'm releasing the air how I want to release it. My tongue is cutting the air how I want it to. I'm using the articulation for that piece. My embouchure is set up the way that I want it. The only thing is I'm not putting the right length of tubing down, but I'm buzzing for those pitches so that when I then put the right length of tubing down, I put the right fingers down. And then I'm in good shape. So everything's in place. It's just that the length of the instrument isn't right. Does that make sense? Any questions, any comments, any thoughts? Put them in the chat or raise a hand and scream out. We're all friends here. No problem. Okay, so that's a little recap on yesterday. This was your assignment. If you can put in the chat what you found, what you found from doing that assignment last night, and also if you can put in your new piece. Just write in the chat what the piece that you've chosen is. I'm really interested to see. It'll actually help us to figure out what we're going to do moving forward. Okay, so today's about making technique easy. Yesterday we sort of started with the building blocks. We're establishing our foundation. Today we're going to make it easy for you guys to fix all these problems, or fix these challenges, or address the challenges. So these are some of the issues that we face when we have a piece. When we get a piece of music, and particularly in auditions, when someone sets an audition, they're gonna make sure that they cover all of these areas. And an audition is basically designed to find out where your weaknesses are and where your strengths are. So in every piece, there's going to be a different group of elements that is going to be focused on. For example, for horn, Tchaikovsky 5, the slow movement solo, it's all about legato, soft control, and a bit of endurance. Not a huge amount of range. The tempo is not going to be that much of an issue. Not a lot of challenging articulation to do, and the rhythm's pretty straightforward. Till Eulenspiegel, on the other hand, different kettle of fish, right? A lot of rhythmical things. Tempo, very important that we get the right changes in tempo organized, and it's a big one for articulation and range. It goes all over the instrument. So if anyone can put in the chat, so I've got here rhythm, tempo, articulation, dynamic control, range, endurance, and style. You can think of other elements that go into excerpts, and think about this in terms of the excerpt or the piece that you've chosen. What are maybe 3 to 5 elements that are going to be exposed in that? And then which one of those elements makes you go, oh, I'm a bit worried about that one. So I'll give you an example. The horn and flute duet from Shostakovich 5 will always give me, well, not now, but it always gave me, made me very stressed out. For most horn players, this is very stressful. Now, for a lot of horn players, the scary part about that is that it's one, soft, and the flute can play really soft, particularly in our orchestra, because I have I have to play it with Dennis, and he's got technique that burns. That's a piece of cake. So it's the soft playing and the high playing. It goes extremely high and is very sustained. For me, those two things weren't an issue. The issue was moving through the range, moving through the octave leaps and controlling those intervals. So that, therefore, and identifying that was really important. That was the thing that made me, a little anxious, a little stressed. So then I can identify that, I can isolate that skill, I can put it into studies, I can put it into exercises, work on that skill, and then bring it back into the excerpt. So have a little think about, what areas in the piece that you've chosen do you find a little concerning, but also what are you going to address? What are the technical areas that you're going to address? We've got some fantastic pieces here. This is awesome. Christine Beattie for fantastic choice. Schoenberg Chamber Symphony. Awesome. Great. So yeah, put in the chat. What are the technical? What's probably the number one technical area for you that is going to challenge you in that piece that you've chosen? So for me, whenever I get a list, if I'm playing a concerto, or if I'm playing a recital, or even in the orchestra, I want to use this list as my sort of like guidelines for, am I taking care of all of these things? And really, what are the things that jump out as I've got to really make sure that I'm aware of? Because what we tend to do in our practice is we sort of will play through something, and then there'll be a little mistake, and we'll just sort of go over and over that mistake without actually thinking about what are the elements of this problem. Why am I making the mistake? Why is it occurring? Where did it start? Where does it end? And how am I going to actually address this? And once we start identifying these things, we've noticed that there are tendencies that we have. For me, my tendency is I'm not very good in the low register or the middle low register if I don't practice it. So being aware of that is absolutely the first thing that I need to have, because then I can build my practice schedule around that. I can make sure that every day I address the area that I've struggled with. And I would guarantee that, in an orchestral audition list, there's at least half of the excerpts that will include the area that you may yourself feel a little bit unsure about, unstable. So if you think about, identifying that particular element, that particular area of your playing, and then you work on that externally, when it comes back to the excerpt or the piece that you're playing, everything's going to be much easier. It's going to be much more stable, and you're going to feel more in control. Any questions or any addition? Great to see these awesome pieces. So Jill talking about accuracy. So this is an interesting one. Farkas, the famous Chicago Symphony horn player, he devised some exercises in his book for accuracy. For me, what I discover in accuracy, and I come up against this all the time because we get through a lot of repertoire in the laphil. Like we're playing every week is a different program, often 2 programs, and in the bowl sometimes 3 programs in a week. So we get through a lot of repertoire. For me, what I've discovered is if my image is clear, if I can hear exactly what I want to play, if I have the musical clarity of what I want to do with the piece, I have no issues with accuracy, or very little. I have much greater issues with accuracy when I can't really hear what I'm doing in my head, and I rely on muscle memory to get the notes out. So this is something that we're going to talk a lot about tomorrow, is this idea of being our inner conductor. And I should have written also this inner opera singer. If you cannot sing it in the way that you want it to go, it will not come out in any meaningful way. And this totally links to accuracy for brass players. And the number of times, and you test this with your piece. This is going to be great. We may be getting a day ahead. But if you're struggling, there's a certain spot where you're struggling in the piece that you've got for this week. Sing the piece, and I guarantee you, when you get to that spot, it'll sound something like this. If I was singing Mozart 3, this is often the way that people actually have the image in their head. It goes in and out of clarity, and what generally happens is the bits where it goes out of clarity is where the inaccuracy happens, the inconsistency happens. So remembering, going back to what we talked about yesterday and what we sort of mentioned at the beginning today, the 3 pillars: technical or physical, musical, mental. Whichever is the weakest one of those is what is going to hold you down. And this is exactly the same with accuracy. So how does it apply to accuracy? Well, physically, if you can't play the notes, then obviously that's going to make things a little challenging. But if your mechanism isn't simple, natural, and repeatable, if it's inconsistent, that is what's going to inherently breed into your playing inaccurate playing. So starting with a really simple approach, natural, repeatable, that is what's going to be the main thing that's going to really help your accuracy day to day. The second thing, the musical aspect, if you don't have a clear musical idea, if you can't hear the pitches, if you can't hear the shape of the phrase, that is going to limit your accuracy. And then on a mental standpoint, if you can't stay focused, if you have to stop every 2 notes and then reset everything and, you know, and move around and start again, and you're not in the moment, you can't actually stay focused on the entire phrase, that also is going to hurt your accuracy. Or if you get distracted really easily. So, you know, when we have inaccuracy issues, there's always a reason, and it's just a matter of us using these tools to track back to what is actually causing the problem. Does that make sense? Right. So yeah, I find in the orchestra, I mean, I believe it or not, I make mistakes, sadly, all the time. But what I discover in rehearsal is when I start missing the same thing a couple of times, or I start really getting anxious before a certain thing, for me, it's almost always because I can't sing it. Almost always because I cannot sing it. Cannot sing it. I can't hear it in my head, and I'm relying on my muscle memory. Now, if I'm having a pretty good day and I feel okay, my muscle memory is pretty good. I can put most of the notes in the right spot. If I'm not having a good day, there are notes flying all around Disney Hall that still are ringing in the rafters. Not the best. So take the time to stop and check that, and then that's going to really help your accuracy. Okay. Oh, Dawn, I'm sure it's going to be fine. We've got no problems. We will turn you into Cecilia Bartoli by the end of the week. No problems. You'll be charging $30,000 a concert in no time. Piece of cake. Actually, I just saw this pop up on Google. I don't know if anyone else did a Google search this morning, but it looked like a drawing of Montserrat Caballé was on the Google search this morning. Maybe it's her birthday, or I'm not sure. But incredible opera singer. Okay. All right, let's keep moving. Look at that. So this this is a really, really fundamental way that I practice excerpts in order for me to feel in an audition and I practice this in the orchestra as well, that I feel confident that when conductors do crazy things, that I've covered everything and that I feel as though I'm going to be bulletproof. This is the same thing that happens in audition. Has anyone ever taken an audition where they said, can the candidate please play the excerpt a little slower, please? Can the candidate please play the excerpt a little faster, please? Can the candidate please play the excerpt louder, please? Can the candidate play the excerpt softer, please? Can they play with more articulation? Anyone had that in an excerpt? Anyone had that where a conductor's asked you to do something different that you hadn't, that it wasn't in your plan? Happens all the time, right? But the problem is we only tend to practice things one way, which is the perfect way for us. We're going to talk about this, in the next few days about creating the image for us, to our ideal image. But when it comes to technique practice, we need to be flexible. We need to make sure that we can do things in multiple ways. So what I want to have for every excerpt or piece is these 5 ways of playing. So if I'm playing, for example, something that's, let's say, pretty fast, maybe something like, this is something that would be relevant to horn players, brass players, and wind players. Mendelssohn Third Symphony or Mendelssohn Midsummer Night's Dream, the scherzo or the third movement. So I want to be able to play that way too slow, even the fast stuff, and then a little bit too slow, and then the perfect tempo that I want to feel comfortable with, and then a little bit too fast, and then way too fast. And the reason for that is the way too slow bit, and this is where we spend a lot of time in the summer program, in our practice planning and organizational modules, talking about how to best structure our practice and how our brain actually works in practice, how to get the most out of your practice, how to utilize how your brain learns. One of the ways that our brain learns and how we get better quickly is through slow practice. So practicing slowly, and a lot of us have heard of this, the reason being is that if we practice slowly and correctly with all of the right elements, our brain really doesn't know the difference between that and playing it much faster. Your brain really just knows what it does the most. So if you repeat something a lot of times slowly and it's done in the way that you want to do it, speeding it up is very comfortable for your brain. What we tend to do is we start at just right and we try and get things to work at just right. And we practice it over and over and over, but we're building in all these mistakes. We're sort of, having a little glitch in the matrix every time we play through it. And then we sort of paper over that and then we keep going, but we don't really change the tempo a lot of the time, or we don't really change the dynamic, or we don't really change, the clarity of the articulation. And what happens is when we get under pressure and we get nervous, all of those little glitches, all that stuff that we've papered over tends to break apart. And that's where we end up making mistakes, and that's where we feel insecure, and that's where things don't work so well. So using this method of this 5-way method is a way that when we do something, and we'll take tempo, for example, because that's the easiest one for us to sort of access. We take something way too slow and we really feel the connection between the notes and we're really hearing everything that's going on. That's what your brain's hearing. That's what we're embedding in that neural pathway. Then we go to a little bit too slow. So we're getting closer to the point where, we're in that ideal Goldilocks zone, but we're creating a little bit more difficulty for our brain. It's a little more challenging for the brain to remember. It's a little bit more coordination that's required. It's a little bit more focus. This is what we need to do in order to learn and in order to establish these good habits. And then we practice the just right way. And obviously you're going to spend most of the time practicing in the just right way because that's the area. In the middle three is where we're going to spend the majority of our time. But we definitely, in terms of a fast excerpt or a coordination excerpt, we want to push this to the too much area. So we're going to go a little bit too fast. Because when we can play it, let's say, for example, the tempo of something is 120 quarter note. If you can play it at 130, 120 feels really quite secure and stable and relaxed. Imagine if you get that to 150. You can play it cleanly, accurately with the character you want 150. When you get to 120, it's going to feel like a walk in the park. It's going to feel totally grounded, totally secure, totally stable. If you think about taking that into an audition, how much confidence is that going to give you? It's going to be huge. If you know that you're playing an excerpt where you feel totally confident, and the conductor says, "Can you play that, 10 beats a minute faster?" And you're like, "Can I do it? I can do it 30 beats a minute faster. Bring it on." And you hear this all the time in auditions. We ask, can the candidate play this a little faster? No, they can't, because the fastest tempo they've gotten to is what they've decided is the ideal, and they have no scope. Or can you play it softer? That's always a big one in auditions. Can you play it softer? No, I'm playing it as soft as I can. So I'm going to give you a demonstration in a minute of how I would approach this for Till Orangefield. But it's something to think about in the piece that you're preparing this week. 5 ways for each of the elements. And that's going to be part of our homework for you this afternoon or today. Any questions? Any comments? Stick them in the chat. So quiet. It's amazing. All right. So from our 5 ways, how do we tie all this stuff together? So we've been talking about a lot of different things, giving you a lot of tools. What is a good way of actually making this into a nice little package? So establish the elements away from the instrument. So that's our breathing, our blowing. Nice and simple. If you're a violinist, you want to make sure that both hands can actually do things in isolation before you put them together. And then we bring it into the instrument. So the idea is that once we've established the elements that we want, so we've got, we're focusing on that feeling, then we apply it into the instrument that we have. Once we've established that with really, really simple drills, really basic things, the foundations of sound production, then we can expand it with exercises. So we can start working on our scales, our flexibility, our arpeggios, other drills that you have in your daily routine. Or if you need a daily routine, just go to our YouTube channel and you can check out one of the dozens of warm-up sessions that we've had over the last 2 years. So we expand it with exercises, making those exercises more challenging as you go. And again, remember, with exercises, you can use these 5 principles. Way too slow, just right. Too fast, way too fast. Way too soft, etc. And then once we're confident that we've got those established and we've expanded them with the exercises, we can apply them to the studies and etudes that you have. So you're building them up and you're adding more musicality to them. You're adding more difficulty. And then the final step would be to deliver these skills into the pieces and excerpts. Okay. So I promised Till Eulenspiegel. So apologies for non-horn players, but this is, this really applies to pretty much anything. So Till, I would start with Till, mouthpiece, no tongue. right? This is going to sound the same as anything else that you would play, but I'm singing in my head the melody of Till Lunchbury. That's the feeling that I want to make sure that I'm putting into the horn. Next step, and of course you can add in, you know, even more simplicity to this, but this would be if I'm preparing it for me for you know, to play with the orchestra. The next step would be slurred. Now, if I'm not sure about my setup, if I don't feel as though my setup's that great, which happens from time to time because I tend to get a little spread if I'm nervous or if I'm not feeling warmed up. Both of them. I'm not that nervous at the moment, but I'm not warmed up. So I would then revert to flutter tongue. For me, flutter tonguing on the horn is an incredibly useful tool. You'd be interested for the flute players. We'll talk with Dennis and find out. I'll talk to him this morning and see if it's useful for the flute. But for horn, this will really establish my airstream and stability. So, let me fix the sound. Apologies for that. All right. So I'm just really maintaining that stability of airstream through the flutter tongue. The tongue is just making things more difficult. Okay, and then I'll go back to the mouthpiece because I'm going to add the articulation in. So for me, I'm also using my stomach to help with the articulation. So my articulation is coming from lows, coming from this low point. So then I would add that in. So that to me is I'm playing slur, the airstream stays totally connected, and all I'm thinking of doing is articulating from my stomach with no tongue. The next step is going to be to add the tongue. So I'm just adding those pieces together. So that I feel as though if I feel a disconnection between the airstream, I would go back and play this one legato with the tongue. And then gradually add the space in, but I'm keeping the same connection of the air. So that I end up as a final product. We're going to expand on this tomorrow with the musical approach. But at this point, technically, that's how I would look at things. Now, for me, the challenge of this, and I don't know if anyone else has this problem. Oh, Suzanne, if you can only flutter with your throat, don't do it that way. For a horn player or for a brass player, what I would do in order to get the similar feeling is for a horn player, play it stopped. For another brass player, use a practice mute and get the worst practice mute that you can find. Something that's really stuffy with a lot of resistance, because that's what's going to help to feel how engaged your airstream is. So for me, with Till-Eulenspiegel, the biggest problem as a high horn player are the low notes. Right? So when I'm going through my discovery of this piece, I'm looking at, okay, so Till-Eulenspiegel, going back to what we had in terms of you know, the issues that we raised. Articulation. Okay, articulation, I've sort of worked on that. I'm feeling pretty good. Rhythm, yeah, the rhythm's pretty good, and I can fix the rhythm into Till-Eulenspiegel by breaking down the actual rhythm. So I would, if you're finding that in this excerpt or in any excerpt you're having rhythmical issues, one of the keys that you want to check is that you can subdivide it in a way that's logical. So. So that's the breakdown of the rhythm, and then I can also tile that back together again. So I'm pretty happy with the rhythm. I'm pretty happy with my articulation. What I'm not happy with on a daily basis is my low register. So I don't want to be playing this excerpt, and I hear students do this all the time, where they just play Till Eulenspiegel. And then they'll play it over and over again that way. And it's like, it's glaringly obvious where the problem is. So why don't we isolate that problem or that area or that issue and address that totally separate as a fundamental thing, and then we add it back in. So in the warm-up sessions, what we did is we used these drills where we played it stopped and we played it bending down a half tone, right? Or stopped. To build strength in that register. The other drill that we would use right? So that drill keeps us connected and gives us good stability. I would be doing that drill for a minute, 1 minute, 5 times a day. Both of those drills, 1 minute, 5 times a day. And within a couple of days, Till Eulenspiegel is going to seem like a walk in the park, because it's exactly the same skill set as. So if you can do that drill, then you're going to be able to apply that to Till. So that I'm looking at extracting what are the technical elements of any given piece, any given excerpt. How do I extract those elements? How do I identify what the problems that I might have are? Away from that excerpt, I want to try and address those issues. When I bring them to the excerpt, then I'm making sure that I'm applying the skills that I've worked on. And if we start looking at excerpts or pieces in this way, it's like a little bit like the magic eye, those magic eye drawings in the pictures in the 90s where you just look at a thing for 5 minutes and then suddenly a unicorn jumps out at you. This is the unicorn, right? If we slow things down and we look at what the elements are and being honest with our own tendencies, it's going to be easy for us to identify, oh, yeah, the reason that I struggle with, what's an excerpt that I struggle with? All of them. The reason that I struggle with Shostakovich 5, the low horn excerpt from Shostakovich 5, is because my low register isn't very good. Right? It's not because I can't, play. Because if you gave that excerpt to a student, to a middle school student up the octave, they'd all be able to play that. It's a very simple melody, right? So the issue is low register. So I just need to address my low register. So what exercises, what drills can I do? How can I expand that through studies? And then how can I keep growing that through these 5 ways that we approach the practice? Any questions? To correct high note issues, high note is a little different than low. High, for a horn player, you don't want to spend a lot of static time in the upper register. That is not going to help you. It's going to make you tired, and it's probably going to lead to some not great technique stuff. Remembering that high register is all about speed of vibration. Speed of vibration comes from speed of air. So if we think about as we go into the upper register on the brass instrument, you need to move the air quicker and you need to engage your stomach more. That's going to help you in the upper register. It's not about embouchure. But yeah, I like to think of moving the upper register like in scales, or moving up and then down and up and then down, so that I'm not spending a lot of time there. I'm just gradually sort of eroding that upper register and developing it that way. Okay. So, your assignment for today, should you choose to accept it, identify 3 technical elements in your challenge excerpt or piece and practice the excerpt using the 5 ways method related to those technical elements. All right, so if one of them is rhythm, so you're going to practice the rhythm too slow, way too slow, just a little bit too slow, just right, Too fast, way too fast. If it's a soft thing, if it's a dynamic thing, expand the dynamic. Way too much or way too little, up to way too much. And with your practice, it's important that you don't spend like 1 hour doing this in one block. Do it in very small chunks. No more, if it's one piece, no more than 5 minutes in a hit. 5 minutes, and then at least 10 minutes before you touch that thing again. But if you do, let's say you wanted to do half an hour's practice on this piece throughout the day, break that up into 6 segments, spread it out across the day with at least a 10-minute gap in between each of those practice sessions on that particular thing. So for example, if you had 3 things to practice, you would rotate them ABC, ABC in your practice session. And then you would spread that out across the day through your practice. I think most of you guys would have had access to my practice planning sheet through the website. But if you'd like a copy of that, just let us know. Send us an email, and we can send you the practice planning template. That will help. All right. So tomorrow is very exciting. We all get to wear very expensive clothing and bring a stick and wave that around and feel the power of being a conductor. So we do a lot of work on musicality tomorrow and how to release the musicality from whatever you're working on and applying the technical to that musicality. All right. So for those of you who haven't recorded your initial excerpt or piece yet, please do it, and for your own benefit. Just do it once you jump off this call. Play it, and then the other thing that would be great to do is after you've been working on it, so after you've done your sessions today, record it again. Record it again, and then at the end of the week, you're going to have a really great snapshot of how you progressed during the week and how much this piece that you've been working on, or how much these areas that are challenging have improved. Who did record it? Who recorded it? Show of hands. Who recorded it? Oh, fantastic! Awesome. Good on you. Great. And if you feel so inclined, there is a post up in the IM community. You can put the recordings up there. It'd be great to see them, and I'm very happy to have a look at those and send through any suggestions. For those of you wanting the practice planning template, please send us an email to team@investedmusician.com. Is that right, Sammy? Is that the email address? There we go, Sammy. Thank you, Sammy. team@investedmusician.com. I will put the assignment up again. Oops, there we go. How's that? So 3 technical elements in your challenge. So for me, for Till Eulenspiegel, it would be articulation, rhythm, low register. And then practice the excerpt or piece using the 5 ways method. So for me, I would start with way too long articulation, just right, too short, way too short. In terms of rhythm, I would be looking at tempo. I would start with a really, really small tempo range, and then I would expand the tempo range. And then low register, I would look at, instead of, I would be, which is actually for Till Eulenspiegel is pretty easy for a horn player because you just play the 3rd horn one and you're automatically expanding. Okay. So looking forward to hearing those videos. Please put them up, or you can send them to us. Also send them to team@investedmusician. looking forward to seeing you guys all tomorrow. Have a great rest of the day.